So I'm on my way to go see my boyfriend at the Miami FDC. So in the Miami FDC, there's the mission statement of the prison.
It is the mission of the Federal Bureau of Prisons to protect society by confining offenders in controlled environments of prisons and community-based facilities that are safe, humane, cost-efficient, and appropriately secure, and that provide work and other self-improvement opportunities to assist offenders in becoming law-abiding citizens.
Does the federal prison actually change an inmate from a criminal to a productive, law-abiding citizen?
I wanted to find out more for the purpose in learning how prisons actually affect inmates. So I went to my school's library resources and databases to see what I could find. I quickly learned the high rates of occupants in American prisons. Having the highest numbers of inmates incarcerated, America houses 25% of the world's prisoners, while home to only 5% of the world's total population. There are 2.3 million in local, state, and federal jails, meaning the highest prison population rate of 716 to every 100,000. Many of these being inmates put away for nonviolent drug-related crimes due to mandatory minimum sentencing. I continued reading and I found some history on mandatory minimum sentencing. The author talks about how in the 1980s, Reagan scared the national public into a sense of national urgency about drug use. So the Anti-Drug Abuse Act of 1988 and the Office of National Drug Control Policies were passed. These two pieces of legislation caused harsh penalties on drug-related crimes and skyrocketed incarceration rates. These highly populated prisons had psychological impact on inmates. So what are some of these impacts? The article says, because prison requires inmates to relinquish the freedom and autonomy to make their own choices, this may lead to prisoners having the inability to initiate behaviors on their own and the judgment to make decisions for themselves. It continues. It says, this proves to be quite a negative effect as prisoners attempt to re-enter society but have lost the ability to provide direction for their lives because they are so dependent on institutions like prison to give them direction. I found an article on the Academic One file from my school's library resources titled Recidivism and Time Served in Prison. It discusses the effects prison might have on recidivism. One idea being that programs, rehab, and therapy can change an inmate's behavior and prevent them from reoffending. Another idea is that the severity and cost of prison alone, for instance, time away from work and family, deters inmates enough from recidivating. On the other side of the coin, some find the benefits of free housing without employment attractive and will still offend after release. I found this especially surprising because I would assume that every prisoner would never want to go back. For a first-hand perspective, I contacted my boyfriend directly to hear his experience and point of view. The first question I asked was, how has being in prison affected your perspective on committing a crime? If it has, why and how? He replied, this experience will absolutely deter me from committing a crime again. Meeting so many people who have been in and out of prison multiple times, I've realized that doing time in prison is actually easy. In fact, maybe too easy. Most people here are back for their second or third indictment, or here because they violated probation. Prison does not deter people from committing crimes. For me personally, being away from my loved ones is incredibly difficult. That is the hardest part. Another question I asked was, has prison in any way hindered or assisted your path for success after incarceration? He replied with, both. It has assisted me with time to really think and figure out what I want in life. However, the label of convicted felon hanging over my head for the rest of my life will certainly hinder employment and even housing opportunities. If I were able to learn a real trade here and somehow be certified or licensed by the time I get out, I believe that I would make a huge difference. From what Hunter said, I can infer that federal prison has different effects on inmates. Let's take a look how Halden Prison in Norway approaches inmates differently.
Dette konseptet med dynamisk sikkerhet veldig sentralt i Norden, nemlig en respektfull og god dialog med den innsatte, som legger grunnlaget både for å tenke framtidsplaner, for å tenke endring, for å skape tillit som basisverdier, for å gjøre endringer i de innsattes liv. Bruke gode samtaleteknikker og ha en samtale som basert på hvis du i stand til å se den innsatte ikke som en kriminell, men som et menneske som har gjort noe kriminelt, hvis du ser den forskjellen der.
A doctor in Kentucky is making waves in recidivism rates through similar methods implemented at the Halden Prison. Among her biggest changes, adding programs that help inmates find housing, health services, and employment, and reestablish positive relationships with family and friends after their release from prison. I'm now here in Miami, and I'm headed into the prison.